Video is everywhere, from TikTok to Instagram and YouTube, and today I'll show you how to add video playback in your SwiftUI apps. We're going to be using Apple's AVKit framework in the video player view. By the end, you'll know how to play both local files from your app and stream videos from a remote URL, as well as how to loop videos and mute videos in case you don't want to hear the sound. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive on in. Now to get started, we'll need Xcode, so you need to have Xcode on your Mac. I'm going to be starting from a fresh SwiftUI file, but if you want to add it to an existing project, of course, feel free to do so. So Apple actually gives us AVKit. So at the top of our file where we have our imports, we're going to be importing AVKit. This is a high-level framework for handling video playback. It's built on top of AV Foundation, but it takes care of the hard stuff, like playback controls, full screen, and picture-in-picture. In SwiftUI, we don't need to rebuild a UI player from scratch. We just need video player view. So let's go ahead and add that. We're going to remove our placeholders here, and in between the structure of content view and the variable body of some view, we're going to create a variable and we'll call it player. This is going to conform to the AV player. We'll then want to add our braces, and from here we'll have our AV player. We're going to choose the one with the URL. From here we just need to include a URL, which would be a string value. And for the URL, we will need a string. Put this in the description below, but there's a GitHub with some public test videos. We can click on any of these. We can verify that the video plays, and we can go ahead and copy that link for our URL. We'll go back to Xcode. We'll put it in our string value. Now we will get an error and we need to either provide an optional or we can force unwrap it. We know that the video URL does work. Next, we need to just reference the video player in our view so we can put it in our VStack. We can do so with the video player. We're going to also include the player, which we've just called to also be player. You can see it's a little bit large, so let's go ahead and add a frame and let's include a height. We can customize it more if we want to. I'm going to put it at 300. And add a little bit of padding. It's like a lot of views where you can kind of customize it. We can see here we can press the play button. It starts playing. We even have things like go forward 10 seconds, back, the video playing speed if we want to make it faster. The mute button doesn't seem to work on the simulator, but I'll show you how to add a custom mute button later. We even have picture in picture. Oh my god, that bird just got smoked. Let's fast forward to make sure it works. And apparently we're watching it's Big Chungus. Big Chungus never went away. My goodness. So we now have the most basic player with AV player, where we just pass a video URL. Now, before we move on to playing local files, I want to talk about the commonly supported formats in AVKit. So for the containers, you can use MP4, also known as MPEG-4, MOV, those QuickTime files, and MV4, Apple's container videos. For the codecs themselves, you should be good with the H.264 or AVC, HEVC, or H.265. I'll just put a list on the screen so you know what I'm talking about. The ProRes, as well as MPEG-4 Part 2, which is pretty older or limited. If you are looking to run audio codecs within the files, it would be AAC, MP3, ALAC, or linear PCM. If you're like, I have no idea what you're talking about, stick to MP4 or .mov and you should be good to go. So that means if you have some video formats like AVI, MKV, maybe WebMs, or perhaps OGGs, they're not directly supported. To use those, you would need some transcoding or a third-party library. Otherwise, MP4 will be your best bet going forward. Okay, let's take a look at how we can support local video files being played. So I'm just going to create really quickly a new SwiftUI view. Let's call it local video view. Okay, first things first is we're going to add our MP4, one of those supported video formats, to our project. We're not adding this to the asset catalog. Instead, we're just going to be adding it to our file directory. So I just have it on my desktop. I'm going to drag it on over. We can see here under our project folder. I'm going to go ahead and drop it in. And we'll want to copy the files to this destination and make sure that the target is our app. I'm also going to rename this file because it's just a random video file. Let's go ahead and call it local video, and I'll just say that it has sound as well. Whatever this name is, here is how you're going to be referring to it in the code, just like when we add images or when we add MP3s, etc. You can even see that you have a little QuickTime player within Xcode if you do want to preview any of that content. Okay, let's hop on back over to our local, apparently I spelled video wrong, our local video view. There we go. And the setup's going to be very similar. So we need to make sure that we're importing AVKit once again. And then under our structure, we're going to be creating our variable of player, which conforms to the AVPlayer. If you wanted to call it local player, so it's a little bit more, recognizable, feel free to do so. We're still going to be having a URL. So we'll do an if let URL, but this time we're going to be looking at our bundle. Basically, our bundle is our app project. So we'll look at the bundle.main.url. Now we're going to be looking for the resource. So you can do the for resource. You can choose the autofill with extension. If you do have a subdirectory, feel free to include it, but because it's just within our project folder here, we should be good to go. So this is where we're going to put the string of the resource name. So we had called it local video sound. So we're going to type it exactly. You could always feel free to just copy and paste the name to make sure that you don't make a mistake. Then with the extension, what type of file is it? Well, for us, it's an MP4 file. If you're ever unsure of what it is, sometimes it even says as the file extension here. Otherwise, you can right click, get info. Might take a second to load. And you can see MPEG-4, which is the MP4 file. Well, after these brackets, we're going to add one more brace. Within this brace, we're going to be returning the AVPlayer. And we're going to have the URL be the URL we had just established. Outside of these braces, but still within the variable of the player, we'll be returning the AVPlayer, the empty brackets. Okay, and then we want to display the player just like we did before, and we'll do a little bit of customization with this one after. But within the variable body of some view, we're going to reference our video player. We choose the autofill with the player here. We just called it player. Again, if you called this one local player, just put in the appropriate name. And then we can add a frame because it's a little bit big. Let's do the width, this to be like 300, and the height to also be 300. So we should be able to play. Something I have noticed is this extension tends to be case sensitive. So if you're trying to play it and you're like, I have the exact name. If we look at the file on my desktop here, we can see it's MP4 in all caps. So sometimes what you have to do is go MP4. There we go. We can see that the video has loaded. You could also rename this extension here if you wanted to put MP4 in lower cases. So if it's not popping up and you're like, I have the right name, double check the capitalization. It is case sensitive for the extension. Okay, now we have our video. We should be able to play it. This is just a video of one of the cats in my neighborhood. There we go. I like hanging out with the cats, and I go for neighborhood walks, and the cats, they like to hang out with me. Anyways, not important. So when we have this video, it's going to play in its entirety. We can skip ahead, but right now the mute button doesn't really work because we just heard the leaves crunch, and it doesn't loop when we're done. So let's really quickly explore how we can add auto looping as well as a mute button if we need to. First thing we're going to be doing is importing AV Foundation, which is a module. You don't need to grab a new package for that. And we're going to be creating a couple new state private vars. So the first one we're going to be creating is going to be a Boolean value. So we'll do state private var. We'll call it is muted. Going to conform to it be a bool, and by default we'll have this be false. I want my sound, if available, to be playing. The second one we're going to be creating is going to be a private var, and this is going to be the end observer. It's going to conform to the NS object protocol, which we'll mark as optional, and by default it'll be nil. Okay, and then we're going to recreate our AV player with an initializer instead. So I'm going to create a private variable called player, which will conform to the AV player. We're going to change where I have on line 21 here, where we were previously initializing our player, to be an initializer with the init keyword and empty braces. We just need to do a little bit of changes because we're initializing. Instead of this return, we're going to be referencing the player to equal the AV player. I want to choose the URL, which would be that URL. Instead of the return outside of the if let, we're going to change this to be an else statement. with our braces, and we'll just have the player equal AVPlayer with empty brackets. So pretty much works the same. We're attempting to locate that video resource with the name. So in this case, local video sound with the extension of MP4. The bundle corresponds to the current app. If the URL is found, we then initialize it with that video. Our else is for if the resource can't be found, missing file, wrong name or extension. We'll instead initialize an empty AV player. This avoids any crashes and lets the rest of the UI load. Without a valid item, the player will not display video until one is set. Okay, and let's go ahead and add all this wonderfulness to the rest of our project. So after our frame of our video player, we're going to be adding a dot on appear. I'm going to choose the option with the braces, and we want to apply the current mute state and start the playback. So we're going to do the player dot is muted. We can see a Boolean value that indicates whether the audio output of the player is muted. We're going to be setting that to our is muted state private variable we had just created. Then we're going to have our player dot play. So whenever it loads, it appears, it's going to start playing the video. Next, we want to avoid adding multiple observers. So if the end observer equals nil, so that double equals, what do we want to have happen? Well, we want to take our end observer and we want it to equal the notification center. From here, we'll be looking at the default, and then we would add an observer. Now I'm going to choose the option name object queue and using for the autofill. And for the name, we're going to be referencing the .AVPlayer item did play to end time. This is basically saying, okay, did the video go all the way to the end? What object are we trying to look for that state in? And that would be the player.current item, which means, this current video player. For our queue, where does this happen? Well, we would be using .main for our main thread, and we're not going to be using the using tag, so we can go ahead and delete that. After the brackets, we're going to add a brace. From here, we'll have our underscore in. This is where we're going to be like, okay, so when it does get to the end, and we've already selected the current item of that video player in the main thread, what do we want to have happen? We're going to take our player.seek, and this is where we can say, hey, I want my video scrubber, the timer, to go to a certain point. So for that value, we're going to go 2, and we'll do the .0 with the 0 spelled out in English. This is going to put our video all the way back to the very beginning. Then we'll have our player.play once again. This is going to create that looping cycle. So the end observer is going to make sure that the video played to the end time. When that happens, it's going to be like, okay, we're going to go back to 0, the very start of the video, and play it once again. After the dot on appear, we can add a dot on disappear. We're going to once again replace this with the braces. We'll say if let token equals the end observer once again, add our brace, and we'll have our notification dot default dot remove the observer. What observer do we want to remove? Well, the token we had just created. And then our end observer will once again equal nil. Again, we're avoiding adding multiple observers, so we just have one. Outside of this if let, we would have our player dot pause. Oh, this should be notification center. There we go. I was like, what do you mean doesn't have a default notification center? Sorry about that. Okay, outside of all of this, we can add our toggle. Toggles are great for Boolean values. We'll give it a maybe mute video label, and the value is going to be based on the is on, we'll add our $sign, what we had called it, is muted. Weird, that's not giving me the autofill. Oh well. Let's add some padding, and I also like for toggles to add a bit of a frame with a width, because without this, they feel so far apart. And with our toggle, whenever we're turning it on or off, we're going to be having the dot on change. I'm going to choose the autofill here. So of, what are we changing? The is muted value. And then outside this bracket, we're going to be having the new value in. We'll have our player dot is muted to the then equal the new value. Okay, so we've added a mute toggle, we've added auto looping. So this is a way more robust video player. Let's go ahead and refresh our canvas and see this in action. Okay, our video autoplayed as soon as it loaded. We can hear it. I'm going to mute the video. We can no longer hear it. And then here, let's see the timer. I'm going to skip ahead 10 seconds and it goes to the very end. So even if we like move ahead to 4 seconds, let it play out the rest, that end observer is going to be like, hey, it ended. I'm going to go ahead and say, I'm going to seek to 0 at the very start of the video. And I'm going to play it again. And we can toggle this mute anytime. You can see I'm talking to the cat, petting the cat. I like cats, okay? And he's very friendly. He's so friendly. We have the video now looping automatically. If you don't want the looping, you don't need to have the end observer. You can instead just have the on appear. If you don't want it to automatically play, you don't need this line where on appear it is playing. So there you have it. In just a few lines with SwiftUI and AVKit with AV Foundation, we were able to get a video player that can handle both local and remote videos, plus the optional looping and mute functionality. This looping we set up and mute functionality would work. You would just change the URL. Instead of being the bundle.main with the MP4 file extension, you would just use the AV URL here with the string. So if you wanted to have the mute for the big chungus video we had earlier, you can of course add that too, and the looping as well. You can use this in media apps, onboarding flows, or anywhere you need rich video playback. If you found this helpful, give the video a like and subscribe for more SwiftUI tutorials. There is so much that you can do here. It is a normal SwiftUI view. I'll put a link to my GitHub in the description below, where I've added a little bit more customization to make this video player stand out a bit more visually. Otherwise, dream big, code bigger, and we'll see you in the next one.